Well, hey there, and welcome to the EQPU podcast, where our heart is to equip you to grow and to become all that God has created you to be. This is episode 20, and we're so excited and thankful that you've decided to join us today. And I'm here in the studio with Pastor John. PJ, how you doing?
Good.
And we also have a special guest joining us. Justin Pleinis is with us on the show, and I'll let him just talk a little bit about himself in just a second. But Justin, we're really excited to have you on, and I know through some of our conversations, I've been wanting to do this for a while. Just hearing you kind of share about your story and some of the things that you've gone through, and you and your family are just such a blessing to myself and my family, but also to our church, and we're really thankful for you guys, and we're glad that you're here because you haven't always been here, and it was, I think, like we were just talking, like 6 years ago, you guys moved to Black River Falls. You're not from here. You're not even really from anywhere close to around here, right?
Yeah, South Dakota.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about that. Talk about kind of your guys' decision to move here. Because there's a lot of things. Well, there's a big thing that played into that. And so talk about that. Why did you guys come here? Why Black River Falls? What God's brought country. You here? Yeah, God's country. And then with that, I'll just say we're really glad that all of that transpired and that you are here. So talk a little bit about that and kind of how this has come to be.
Yeah, I grew up on a farm in South Dakota. Basically I have cystic fibrosis, which is a lot of what I can talk about today. But growing up on a farm, my parents had no insurance, not really no money. So I didn't get diagnosed till I was 16. And the reason I got diagnosed at 16 was my grandma told my parents that she will give them $1,000 if they would just take me someplace else instead of the places they could afford. So at that point, I was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis at 16. I already had they knew something was wrong with me practically since birth, but they didn't know what it was. And I was misdiagnosed as allergies or asthma or all this other stuff that didn't help me at all. So a lot of damage was done at 16. And at age 16, when they did diagnose me, they said I would never see 18. My health was so bad. My lung capacity was about 20% of a normal person of my height and weight, which is close to death at that point. So I would get up every morning and throw up like a cup of mucus that had come from my lungs into my stomach while I slept. That was just my normal routine. So definitely a lot of damage. I weighed 69 pounds as a sophomore in high school.
Oofta. Like my left leg weighs 69 pounds.
So it was, I mean, if you saw my yearbook, it looked like somebody just took me around and repositioned me again, like I was a mannequin or something, just clothes hanging off me. So definitely it was bad. And then at 16, like diagnosed, it didn't get better because that really messed with I was a happy kid, but that really messed with my mental state.
Sure.
When you got 2 years less to live, at 16, it hits hard. The other thing I was saying is, when I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, when I first was diagnosed, they were running the chemicals through me, the antibiotics, as hard as my kidneys can handle it, to try to fight the infection in my lungs. At that same time I was there, they told my high school, which is a small school, it's like 100 kids for all four, 9 through 12. So everybody knows everybody. And in there, they told them the same news I had, that, he probably has less than 2 years to live. So coming back, a lot of my friends really distanced themselves from me. And I can't blame them, because at that age, I'm not mature enough to handle either. Why would you want to put yourself in a position to be friends with somebody you're going to be burying?
And at that age, death is not a reality.
No.
It's like you think you're going to live forever. So when you know of someone that you personally know that's going to potentially die before they're 18, I don't think a 16-year-old mind can wrap their mind mind around it.
So yeah, I struggle with that too. And and did a lot of things I shouldn't have done, because your will to live,
Greatly
what difference does it
diminished.
make? What
Yeah.
my will to live is,
Yeah.
the doctor said I got less than 2 years to live.
Yeah.
So why should I, live for the future? So like I say, there's way too much drinking and other stuff going on. But with the drinking, and again, there's 25 kids in my class. We all knew each other, like I said, and we're all good friends. But what turned my life around, a lot of that was at 18, just after graduation, before we went to college, I had to bury one of my classmates because they rolled their vehicle on top of their head and killed him. And then that was a big wake-up call for me, that at that point, I could see myself laying underneath that vehicle, being the one being buried.
Sure.
And something changed that day. It's not, I think God basically, kind of shook me up with that basically, at that point I'm like, well, okay, I'm still here. It's almost 2 years later and I'm still here. I don't feel like I'm any worse off than I was back at 16. So, I'm going to not believe the doctors, and just, I'm a stubborn person. So I'm going to prove you doctors wrong.
Yeah.
And, that was 30 some years ago.
Yeah. I'm curious, and there's a lot that we'll come back to and we'll kind of talk through, but I think a lot of people have probably heard of cystic fibrosis or CF, but I don't, and I was even thinking about it. I'm like, I don't even know if I totally understand like all of what that entails and what that means. Like when somebody, like, what does that mean? What's happening in their body? So can you kind of explain that a little bit?
Sure. A lot of people see it as a lung disease, because that's what kills people. The lungs basically just disintegrate. The bacteria, what it does is, because of the disease, it creates a perfect petri dish for bacteria to grow in your lungs. Your mucus is like water. My mucus is like peanut butter. So it's hard enough to cough water out of your lungs, try to cough peanut butter out of your lungs. So that's part of it, but it's really not a lung disease. Lung disease is just what kills people, typically with CF. It is actually a genetic cellular disease. You get it from both parents have to be carriers or at least a carrier in order to get it, because it's a recessive gene. So both my parents were carriers. They didn't know it. There was a lot of that, growing up too. Why me? So you have 1 out of 4 chance. If both your parents are carriers, you still only have 1 in 4 chance of getting it. My parents had 4 kids. I'm the only one that got it. So, we'll get into that a little bit too, with it, a lot of that, why me, God type of deal. But so cystic fibrosis, it's on a cellular level. The cells do not process salt properly. So it does not put the salt out of the cells properly. So the cells keep the salt in and make it stickier. So all your mucus throughout your whole body is much stickier. And because of that, all your glands and organs are affected.
Sure.
Like my pancreas has been absorbed years ago because it, just gets plugged up with mucus. Doesn't work. So truthfully, every organ in your body is affected by it. It's just the lungs are the ones that normally take a person out. So.
Yeah. And typically, like, if somebody gets diagnosed with this, I mean, in your case, it's like you got diagnosed with this and they're like, you got 2 years. Is that normal for most people?
Most people have to be diagnosed as a baby. And in fact, most hospitals are required to screen for it when a baby is born in a hospital. Back then, I've always been older than the average life expectancy of somebody with the disease, and I still am. It's coming up, and it's coming up. The average life expectancy is coming up rapidly, but it will never. I'll always be older because it can't jump over me, because
Sure.
It has to come up with it as people live longer.
Yeah.
So we've been kind of the guinea pig generation with cystic fibrosis. I think within it was in just 6 months after I was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis, they said finally identified the gene that caused it.
Okay.
And once that was identified, everybody's like, okay, we got a cure coming, within the next year or two. Well, that was again, almost 40 years ago, and there's still no cure. It's still not curable. There are treatments. You treat the symptoms, you can't really treat the disease. There are some new meds that are helping to regulate some of that.
Sure.
It's meds you take every day, expensive as it all can be, but you take it every day to help the cells push some of that salt out better. So, but it's still not a cure. So
yeah, that's crazy. And so, I mean, you talk about like growing up on the farm, South Dakota, and then you kind of talk about how you had that moment where it was kind of a wake up call for you. Did you grow up like going to church? Did you grow up like with some sort of faith background? And then, and what did that look like? And then when you got this diagnosis, I know you kind of alluded to it a little bit already, but then when this diagnosis came, did this change or affect your view of God?
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, I grew up Lutheran. My dad was very, very, he was strict about making sure we all made it to church on Sunday. You know, that was just, it wasn't an option. That was something we did. That was about the only time he left the farm was Sunday mornings to go to church. And we all went. So I grew up knowing right from wrong, knowing what the Bible said. And yeah, it just, I knew better, but it was just, you know, it was a little bit of self-pity with that. Why me? Why God? You know, why? Could have been any of my other siblings. Not that I want them to have it, but,
right.
But, you know, or it could have been none of us, you know. There's still only 25% chance you get it. Why did I get it? Why at this time? Why did you let so much damage happen? Like say, if you were diagnosed early enough and you started treatment early enough, a lot of it's still not curable, with a lot of the damage to the lungs is slowed
preventable
down.
or slowed down.
Yeah, it's slowed down. But by the time I was diagnosed, there was so much scar. A lot of my lungs are just scar tissue. They don't function as lungs anymore because it just turned into scar tissue. So my lungs are better now, but yeah, it was painful there. But so yeah, I grew up with a good church background.
You mentioned that you have a regiment or something that you go through, the medication that you take. Is there other things that you have to do on a regular or daily basis just to like try to stay ahead of it? And what does that look like?
Yeah, my normal, before, when I was still working, I had to do a vest treatment. Well, I'm nebulizing meds. I have this vest on that's shaking me. I'm breathing these medicines in, several different medicines. And that takes about 2 hours per session. And I used to do 3 to 4 sessions a day. So it's 6 to 8 hours a day. I'm strapped to this machine that's shaking me and nebulizing medicine to try to get the mucus thinned out and get it coughed up. When that doesn't happen, then you have to go in the hospital, and I used to have a port that would go directly into my heart, and they'd access it with needles, and then they'd run me for 2 to 4 weeks of antibiotics as strong as my liver and kidneys can handle them. So you have to go in every other day and have your blood drawn to see if your kidneys are still, how much can they push those chemicals. And it's like chemotherapy. It wrecks your body. And it's just nasty stuff, nasty chemicals in there. That's, like I say, I do that actually 3 to 4 times a year. I'd have to do that chemical treatment of antibiotics. But every day I'd spend 6 to 8 hours tied to a machine. Now, when I'm working, I couldn't get it in. So I'd do like the morning one and the evening one, but the afternoon ones I could not get done. So I was only getting 2 out of my 4 sessions in. And that caused my lungs to continue to decline. I wasn't doing proper treatment.
Yeah.
That I needed to do to take care of myself, which is why I had to force myself to retire. I didn't want to, but I had to, for my kids and to be home for them.
I know it can be like, that can be hard too. 'Cause obviously I think, you know, we're wired to work instead of then to just have to shut that off and turn that off. But now, since you've been here, and maybe you can talk a little bit about too how in the world you ended up here. But now, since you've been here, I mean, you're super involved here at church. You're helping out on a local farm. You're doing a lot of stuff, which it sounds like, from what I'm understanding, somebody typically in your position, with everything that you've gone through and with where you're currently at in your life in terms of your age and your life expectancy, when somebody's diagnosed with that, you probably shouldn't be, like, realistically speaking, you know, like if somebody gave the exact scenario, they're like, you probably shouldn't be able to do the things that you're doing right now. And so maybe talk a little bit about how in the world, like, you're in this spot and kind of some of the things that have transpired with your health over the years.
Yeah. Cystic fibrosis is a progressive disease. So you don't get better. You just keep declining until death. And for the most of my life, that was the trend. You know, my lungs just kept getting worse and worse. When I retired, the best they could get my lungs up to would be about 40% of a normal person. So it would drop down into the high 20s. They'd shoot me full of chemicals and clean everything out, you know, wreck your body. And it would get up to about 40% of a normal lung capacity. And with that bouncing between 25 to 40%, I was looking at needing a lung transplant. And where I lived in Montana, you can't get a lung transplant. You can't get it in anywhere in Montana. You couldn't get it in Wyoming. Couldn't get North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, you know.
And that's because of the travel time. Is that right?
They're not available. The medical facilities are not available for lung transplants.
Okay.
I would have to drive 10 hours any direction to go to Denver, go to Seattle.
And with a lung transplant, that's like they call you up and it's like, get here as soon, right?
Yeah. You have to get there quickly. Like somebody's a car accident, lungs, you have a match for you have to get there and get it done.
Because they only have hours to be able to use those lungs.
And the other piece of it is it's not a one-time deal. You got to keep going back a lot
because we have someone in our church who got a lung transplant a couple of years ago, and he regularly goes to Madison.
Yep. So with that, we were looking at, okay, I need to retire. Like I say, the government can replace me. My kids can't replace me as easy as the government can. So I decided to retire, and after 20 years, and take care of my family, or take care of myself or my family. And with looking around, you know, our parents were aging, so we decided to move back to North Dakota for a few years to take care of some aging parents as I retired. I still worked remotely for another year once we moved to North Dakota. And then my dad passed and my wife's mom passed, both of cancer. And then after that, we were there for 3 years. Then we started, you know, my health was still 40% best. So we were looking for a place that we could get a lung transplant. And Mayo Clinic was top on our list. So we started house hunting. So we came out, had 36 houses picked out to look at.
36?
Yep, 12 houses each day. That's what we had set up with the realtor. And in 2 days from the time we picked those out, we came out here, we looked at houses on Monday, and on Tuesday, all 12 houses around Rochester were off the market.
Oh, so when you said you came out, you first went to Rochester.
Yeah, we were looking at Mayo Clinic, Rochester, and most of our houses were around that southern Minnesota area. All of them were scheduled to be in that area. So we were looking really hard at Rochester, but it was such a hot market, you couldn't buy a house unless you were there and willing to pay above market price to grab it. And, you know, we're not loaded. So the second day of the 3 days was nothing to look at. So we talked to the realtor and said, well, why don't we look at Wisconsin then? It's not too far away. So there was 3 houses here in Black River. So I was like, well, that's worth the trip then to drive that far, you know, a couple hours from where we're looking to look at 3 houses. So you suggested
Wisconsin, and Black River Falls was the first thing that popped up?
Black River Falls probably had the most houses on the market at the time. And there was 3 of them.
This was 2018 roughly, 2017? 2018.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we came out to look at 3 houses, and one of them, you know, fit. It was twice the house for half the money of anything we can get around Rochester. And then we started doing some digging into it. I was like, well, for my lungs to go back to Mayo Clinic, you know, it's just a 2-hour drive. And really now my lungs have improved. I'm actually looking at 65% of a normal person now, which is not.
And let's specify that's not normal.
No, that's unheard of for this disease. It's just regressive disease.
It's the air of Black River Falls, people. It's the air.
Something special.
No, I like it here.
It's beyond the air. We know that there's another person involved.
Yeah. So like I said, the doctors can't explain it. I was like, that's okay. You don't explain it. I know it's a God thing. We're here. 65. Cool. He's taking care of me. So that's what brought us to Black River Falls was house hunting around Mayo. Couldn't find it. Found a house here. And then if you look at it where Black River Falls is, if I ever did need a lung transplant, I can go 2 hours to Minneapolis, 2 hours of Rochester, 2 hours of Madison. I'm kind of in a triangle of a lung transplant center.
Mhm.
If I want to go 4 hours down the road, I'm right in Chicago, which has plenty of
Mhm.
other.
Yeah.
So I'm in a good location if I ever need it. I hope I never do need a lung transplant.
Because you are no longer on the transplant list.
Nope, not at that point. And like I said, I'd rather just
And that happened
keep my parts.
after you moved here.
Yeah, I got better very quickly after we moved here. So like I say, they came out with some new meds in that time, but I was on those meds for 2 years and my lungs did not improve on those meds. So yeah, some people may see some improvement with some of the meds and not to that level.
Not to that
that's a
extent.
50% gain from 40 to 65. That's a 50% over where you're at baseline, more than 50% improvement. And some people see 10% improvement on their lung capacity.
And that would be considered like a good
That'd be a
thing.
good result based on the meds.
So does your percentage hang right around 60%? Or like what's your lowest?
I've been 61 to 65 for the last 6 years.
Seriously?
Since I've moved here.
Wow.
I have since removed my port. I have not had.
So you no
the
longer
chemicals.
even go to those 2-week hospital visits
Nope,
where they
I don't-
pound you
haven't
full
done
of the
those
chemicals.
And I don't think I've done those since I moved here. I think I did one just before I moved here, but not since.
That's unreal. That's awesome.
So yeah,
Thank you,
and that,
Lord.
like I say, it's really hard on the body. So I'm glad I'm not doing those.
I mean, it's just cool. Like you guys, you came here thinking like, hey, now we're in a better spot. If lungs transplants needed, like
Yeah.
we're in a good spot.
Yeah.
And now it's like you've been here for 6 years, and it's like that's not even. I mean, that's why you moved here, but now it's not why you're here anymore. Like
No.
it's not really something that you're thinking about too much right now.
We're here because we like it here.
Yeah. No, I'm curious though, like as you've kind of walked through and I mean, kind of gone through some of the highs and the lows of this and now have obviously seen your body like improve drastically. Has this like changed or impacted your view of God like in any way, or has this maybe shifted your perspective of him, or what does that look like?
A lot of it is trust. When you're 16, you don't have a lot of experience. I can look back at my life. I don't see a lot of reasons to trust anybody.
Yeah.
But at this age, much older than 16, I can see that. I can look back, and that a lot of it is trust. We still have bad days, but it's not why me anymore. It's like, hey, I'm having a bad day, but I'm still trusting you, God, no matter what happens. Even if today's my last day, I'm still trusting you. And that was a lot of stuff I had to work through, particularly for my kids. You love your kids. To imagine them going, imagine them going on as children to go on without a parent.
Yeah.
Right.
It's hard to see, hard to imagine. But I wrestled with that as well, that, hey, I trust God. If he takes me, I believe he has a plan to take care of my family. I don't have to be the one to do it.
Yeah.
But that's not how I was brought up. It's my responsibility to take care of it. So that, again, a lot of it's just trusting God for literally my next breath.
Yeah.
And that's, it changes a lot of your mentality when you start to live each day as your last.
Yeah.
You try not to waste the days. Because I've been in some bad situations where you're on the floor, just really literally grasping on hands and knees, gasping for air, waiting for the ambulance to show up. So it's, you got those days and your life is flashing before your eyes. But it really comes down to trust God. No matter what happens, I trust he's going to take care of my family. He's going to take care of anything that I need to take care of will be done by him, and he's taking care of me. So I don't need to worry. And that takes the weight off you and allows you to live like I believe he wants you to live.
And I wonder too, like even as you say that, I wonder too if that even like does have some sort of kind of effect on our health too. Like when you can actually get to that place where, because again, like there's so much science around like what worry and fear and all that stuff and stress and anxiety does to your body. So it's like, yeah, when you do get to that place of trust where it's like, God, I know I'm in your hands, like
Yeah.
and you're in that place of freedom. And it's, I don't know, it just makes me think too. It's like, it's just a reminder, God knows what he's doing.
Mhm.
Like, and I think a lot of times we like to think that we know what we're doing, but God really knows what he's doing when he created us and as we're living and all that. So I think that's just so cool to hear.
So you mentioned, you talked about trusting God in all aspects, and you grew up going to church, but I would assume, and forgive me for assuming, you probably didn't have a personal relationship with Christ. You knew, like you said, you knew right from wrong, and you knew what, the Bible said. But I can't imagine being 16 years old and being told that you're not going to see your 18th birthday. But as you begin to pass these milestones in your life, thinking, hey, I made it to my 18th, I made it to my 19th, when and where or what transpired where you started pursuing, or at least thinking, okay, maybe there's someone, God, that has a hand on my life, and maybe I should pursue or figure out who he is, or at least get to know him? What did something other than your cystic fibrosis, did something happen, or can you point to a time in your life where you're like, hey, I need God in my life? And what did that look like for you?
Yeah, for me, it was probably in my late college years. Like I said, when I was going to college, I buried my good friend and classmate, and that steered me a different direction. Now, that wasn't overnight, that, okay, I'm giving up alcohol and I'm doing God the next day. That didn't happen. Because you're going to college.
But something triggered in your mind to start thinking differently.
Correct, yeah. And that was, because before that, at 16 or 17, I didn't care if I lived or not.
Yeah, because they told you you weren't going to.
And when I like I say, when I was I was already over 18 and buried my friend, and that's where I'm like, well, like I said, part of it's probably just stubbornness.
Yeah,
I'm going to prove you doctors wrong, but the other part is I did want to live, and I did want to make the world a better place than when I came into it. So in college, there was 5 of us friends, and we were all different denominations. So we took turns going to each other's churches.
Sweet.
On Sunday. So we, go Catholic one week, Lutheran the next week, Assemblies of God one week, Evangel Free another week, So we just were a group of friends, and we all, shared the basic core beliefs are the same. So we just did that. And part of my problem and why I stepped away a little bit is, for me, the Lutheran Church just became empty words, because we said the same words every single week. So I could recite those without ever thinking of what I was actually saying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that wasn't working for me. Part of the reason why I didn't do it in my early college years, I didn't continue with my faith or go to church anyway.
Sure.
But as I went around and saw the other different denominations and actually started feeling God's pull at my heart there, and started listening. You can ignore God. If you keep ignoring God, it gets real easy to ignore him. If you start listening to him, it becomes a lot easier to start listening to him. It's just whatever you're seeking for, you're going to find.
Yeah.
So in college, I started seeking more, and then I met my wife. Well, she wasn't then, but my wife now. Met her. She was Assemblies of God, and that was a good fit for me, because that was what I was already doing. We did go to Assemblies of God with one of my friends before I ever met my wife, so I already knew that.
And we tend to, when we meet ladies, we tend to chase after them wherever they're at, whether it's church or youth group or college. So
yep. So it was a good fit, and she's good in her faith. So together, we just helps to have somebody alongside you that helps you grow with it too. So together, we were, like my dad did, made sure we were in church every week. It wasn't an option. So we were there to be part of the community. I'm not saying you have to be to church to be saved. Just it's what the Bible says. You should be in community with other fellow believers, and it makes a big difference. I was going through a lot of this health stuff alone, and in college, I didn't tell anybody I had a disease. It was just
because you were afraid of what happened in high school would happen.
Same
in
thing
college.
happened in high school. Yep,
Sure.
that okay, thanks for letting me know that. And then boom, they're gone. You know, they have no room for anymore. And truthfully, 19-year-olds are not a whole lot more mature than 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds. So, in college, nobody knew I had a disease. I did not, at that point, treatments didn't really exist. So,
but were you taking medication?
I had to take every time I eat food, I have to take medication because my pancreas no longer exists.
Okay.
So if I don't, that's why I was 69 pounds. I was not digesting 95% of what was going in my mouth was not being absorbed.
So you just ate donuts all the time.
I could eat whatever I wanted and it's going straight through.
Wow.
But
I don't want that. No,
yeah, you could just, it's not worth it for that.
No, it's not.
But because of that, I had to sneakily take, every time I ate, I had to, act like I had to do something, and get the pills in my mouth and drink it, because people are sitting right across me at the table eating it. So,
sure.
But my wife did find out. She,
so when you met, she didn't know.
She didn't know, but she knew really quick afterwards because she snooped in my bag that had my medicine right in there. And
I thought you were going to say because she's very perceptive, but you're blaming on it.
I mean,
Snoopy.
She saw it right on the bottle, and she actually, crazy story is she actually did a report on cystic fibrosis as a high schooler. She didn't know me then. No.
Really?
So years before she ever knew I existed, she did a report on cystic fibrosis. So as soon as she saw the medicine, she knew exactly what was going on.
That's crazy cool.
And she was probably one of the first ones to find out after high school, and she didn't run away. But she takes in the strays, so
yeah.
So she probably was more interested in me after that than she was before. But have to ask her for sure.
So something you said a couple minutes ago, and I want to kind of hit on for our listeners, because whether you're listening as a believer or you're just listening to this podcast, you said something about when you were going to these different churches and you could sense God drawing you, pulling you, and you could sense his presence and stuff. There's a passage of scripture, and I can't tell you the exact address, but it says God draws all men unto himself.
Oh.
And the thing is about that is, yes, God does the drawing. We have to make the choice to respond to him. He's constantly drawing us through just his presence and who he is. And because he's a loving father, and it's like a lot of times we think God's going to do everything for us. There has to be a response part. And so, and I'm not saying there, but you obviously did a response. And I'm just want to reiterate to our listeners that God is drawing you. And as you said, the more you respond to his presence, the more you hear him, the more you sense him. And the more you ignore him, the less you're going to sense. It's the same thing. God's drawing. It's just, are you responding to that drawing?
Yeah.
And so, that's really cool that you could distinguish that, and you started noticing that at a young age. And my understanding is it wasn't your disease that pushed you closer to God. It was just, you knew that he was the source. And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but is that, basically what you're saying? Yeah,
my disease really had no impact on that. I mean, it's just something I'm dealing with. It's not who I am. It's just what I have. But yeah, I wasn't, okay, God, go heal me. I'm only going to serve if you heal me. I wasn't anything like that. No, I'm sure I probably bargained with, things before a younger age, but at that point it was, I'm trusting you if really today is my last day, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And even like I say, even if today was my last day, I have no regrets. I can't complain. It's been a good life. I mean, the doctors told me you're never going to have kids. Well, there's two of them walking around. So, just things that all my dreams are being crushed. At 16, I wanted to fly jets for the Air Force. Well, you're not going to do that with this. I didn't. I never did. And I never will fly jets for the Air Force. But that was my dream at that time.
But you did work for the Air Force, right?
Yes, I did. Yep. So
at the beginning of this, you talked about trust and how it's been developed in your life. And let me ask you this question. If you never were diagnosed with cystic fibrosis and you lived what I would say a normal life, not that your life's not normal, but
life free of it.
Yeah, a life free of the disease. Do you think, and I know it's hard, this is totally speculation, but do you think you would be, and I don't mean physically, do you think you'd be where you're at today spiritually in your relationship with God? Why or why not?
I do not think I would be the same. And a lot of it is like I said, I'm a stubborn, headstrong person. And I think I need or would have needed a lot of people are until they hit rock bottom. They're, I don't need God. I'm doing just fine the way I am.
Yeah.
And I think I would have been the same way. If I was hunky-dory doing things, I would know of God, but I wouldn't have time, I would say, for God, because I'm doing my own thing, doing just fine without it. Something else could have come along, some other tragedy or challenge.
Yeah.
And like I say, I hate tragedies and challenges, but I think some of those are required for people to really get that slap,
Yeah, God
wake
can
up
use
slap.
them. Yeah.
That hey, there's more than just you in this world,
Yeah.
more than myself. Like,
and I want to be clear is that I want you to understand, not you, Justin, but the listeners, that God doesn't cause these things in our life so that we choose to follow him or reject him. We live in a fallen world. Tragedy, disease, all these things are a part of our world. And so when they come into our world, we have a choice. Are we going to run towards God or are we going to run away from God? And so, and that's what you're saying, that this cystic fibrosis has propelled you towards God. Maybe you can talk about this, but was there ever a time where you were angry at God because you had this?
Yeah, at first it definitely I was running away from God, and it was the why me thing. Hey, if you're gonna not cure me of this, then why do I need you? Type of deal. So yeah, for those next couple of years after I was diagnosed, between 16 and 18, that I definitely was not in God's corner.
Yeah.
And didn't feel he was in mine.
Yeah.
So I was, some ways almost trying to expedite the process to the grave.
Sure.
Doing things I knew I shouldn't be doing medically wise, not doing the treatments I should be doing to take care of myself. And like I said, I didn't do those in college either. I took some pills, but that's all I did. I did not do any vest treatments. I didn't do any nebulized treatments. I did none of that. Hindsight, because then I wasn't going to have a family, wasn't going to have kids or anything.
Yeah.
Hindsight, I wish I would have.
Yeah.
But at that point, there's probably about 4 years there that God was meaningless.
Yeah.
For the most part, even though I knew better. And then once I started getting drawn back, you do that and you really are kind of rock bottom. I'm doing this, I'm pushing through. It's been 4 years now. Nothing's really better. I'm still a mess.
Right.
Maybe I should try it a different way than my way. And can't say it's been roses ever since, but it's definitely better than doing it alone.
Yeah.
Right.
And once I started sharing it too, I think that helped too, that people know what you're in and not trying to pretend everything's fine when it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think obviously it's like, none of us, I think I was talking about this on the last episode, we're like allergic almost to discomfort. Like if we're honest, like all of us, we just want to be comfortable. And it's not that, and none of us are going to go out seeking discomfort, but it's just like we see that like God really clearly can use these hard things and these difficult things in our lives to like pull us closer to him, to show himself real in our lives. But again, like we said before, we've got to allow that to happen, and we've got to also take those steps toward him. And I remember I was in a small group when I was in college, and we were kind of talking about this. We were talking about difficult things and suffering, and one of the girls said something like, yeah, I actually like ask and want like hard times, because I've realized like, and I was like, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard anybody say.
You don't need to ask or want them; they'll show up.
Yeah, but she and I'm not saying I'm asking for that, but her point was like, too often she'd realize like, hey, things are good, and she's not prioritizing her relationship with God. But then all of a sudden, when there's something going on, it's like, well, who are we going to? And it's like in some ways, we need some of those hard things to push us towards him and to help us realize like, hey, I can't do this by myself. Even when things are good, even when things are going fine, like we need God to help us. And obviously, you talked about trust so much, like God has done that. And it's cool that he's taken this and used it to change your life. And now you've had kids and you're married, and it also is changing their lives and affecting and impacting their lives as well. And so it's just so cool, like how God is able to work and use all those things that we look at and we're like, man, this sucks, but yet God is still able to bring good to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another one of the items I kind of struggle with. One of, like, if I died, who's take care of my kids type of stuff, was also the act, just what you talked about. Would I really want to be healed, completely healed? And sorry to say, to a lot of people, I don't think I do. I think I want to trust God more than I want to walk around not worrying about my breath. I think that's so important to keep that relationship, because I just know who I am. Like the Israelites, they get across the Jordan. So how can you forget that? It's dry. How can you? Right. But they did, and I don't think I'm any better. I think, okay, you've healed me. 2 years from now, if you healed me, am I still going to be seeking after God the way I am now? Yeah. And I don't think I would be. And for that reason, I would rather have this to keep me close to God.
Depend on Him.
To totally trust Him, to know that I am mortal. I am not God myself.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like Paul's thorn in the flesh. No one really knows what that was. He asked God to remove it, and God said, my grace is sufficient. Yeah. And so it's like that thorn was a reminder that God is all sufficient, that His grace is there for us. And I'm not saying He puts these problems in our lives so that we were reminded of who He is, but it's a choice on our part that, hey, I'm going through these circumstances, so I'm reminding myself that I need to trust God all the more.
Right.
And when life is hunky-dory and a bed of roses, we have a tendency not to look to God because we have all of our supplies and all of our needs met through our own self-sufficiencies.
Yeah. And I think that's just such a good reminder too, because I think there's probably people listening who maybe aren't dealing with CF, but have things going on in their life that I think, like, people get obsessed and they'll chase, like, the healing. They want the problem solved. They want the problem fixed. And I think, like, exactly what you're saying and what you've learned is that more important than the healing, like, I need to be going after the healer. Like, I need to be walking in relationship with Christ, with the one who is able to even do that in the first place. Because again, like, I think exactly what you said, I think there's a lot of people that almost idolize healing, and they're like, man, if I just get this, if God would just do this, if this relationship would be healed, or if this physical ailment would be healed, then I would be good and life would be great. And then all of a sudden it happens, and it's like, I think, we can, sometimes I like to say, like, sometimes as Christians, you bring up the Israelites, like, we like to have short-term memory loss. Like, it's like we forget what God just did. And then all of a sudden, this thing that you were chasing after, it's like, God, would you just give me this? Would you just do this? And the whole time you were so focused on what you wanted from Him that you never actually grew and built your relationship with Him.
Yeah.
And so I think, for anybody listening, don't be so fixated or caught up in the thing that you're wanting God to change that you're missing actually getting to know God.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And it's not to say that He can't do those things, because He obviously can, and He does. And
we know people and have had that happen.
Yeah, and it's not even to say that we can't ask for that stuff, because I think it's more than okay to ask God for that. It's just, what is my focus, and am I idolizing the outcome that I desire, or am I choosing to prioritize and grow in my relationship with the one who can provide said outcome, whatever that might look like. So as we get close to wrapping it up, though, are there any other final thoughts, anything that you didn't get to say that you were hoping to be able to say, or anything that you would maybe encourage somebody who's listening with, who might be struggling with maybe a disease or something they've been battling for a long time that they feel like they haven't seen much progress or victory in?
Yeah, and that's very similar to that too. I've obviously been battling this all my life. And it can beat you down, but it doesn't have to. You can still stay positive. And again, that all comes back to trust. Trust that it's going to be okay. It's not going to be roses, but it'll be okay. You're not going to have everything you want, but it's not good to have everything you want either.
Yeah.
So it's just, for me, that's a big one. That's what keeps me positive, is knowing that it's out of my hands. I can't cure this myself. The doctors can't cure it. There's nobody on earth that can cure it. God can cure it, but like I said before, even though he can cure it, I don't think I want him to cure it.
Yeah.
Because of who I am. Now, maybe if I was a different person, I might be different. Cure me away because I'm going to stick with you, Matt. But since I wasn't necessarily sticking with him before, why would I think I'm going to stick with him afterwards?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't trust myself to do what's right. Stick with God. If I was perfectly healthy, so I it's hard to see it as a blessing sometimes, but I want to call this a blessing. My cystic fibrosis is a blessing for my personality.
Yeah.
It not sits for everybody.
Right.
But for who I am, I wouldn't be where I am today, without that trust and knowing where my future lies.
Yeah. No, that's so good. Yeah, and it's just a good thing for anybody to think about. It's like who or what is my trust in.
Yeah.
And that gives me the peace that I can be happy instead of just, wallowing in my pity about poor me like I had done for many years.
Yeah.
Now I don't do that anymore. So it's just, hey, if today's my last day, that's great. It's been a good life. If it's not, I'm looking forward to tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I just, whatever he gives me, I'll take.
Yeah. No, that's good. PJ, you got anything before we?
No, just thank you for sharing your story and being vulnerable and all that you and your family represent or do here at Bridge Church. We're grateful for that.
Yeah. Yeah. We're glad that you were on the podcast today. You repping the EQPU colors. So it was perfect. That's a perfect shirt for it. We might need to all get shirts like that for the podcast. But no, seriously, we appreciate you, and not just for being on the podcast, but everything that you do, we appreciate. And I'm thankful for who you are. You've been a friend to us and to me, and just thankful for you and the opportunity that I have to know you and to even be able to hear about this and see like firsthand. Obviously, I didn't see what life was like before, but to be able to know like, hey, God has done so much in your life, and yeah, to just be able to see that and the joy that you live with on a consistent basis, when a lot of people could look at you and say you've got every reason to be crabby or upset or angry or ornery, but the joy that you live with on a day-to-day basis, your willingness to serve and help whoever, whenever, wherever, I just appreciate that and admire you and inspired by you and your family and your heart. So
yeah, God's given me different talents. He hasn't given me perfect health, but he's given me a lot of different talents. Those things that, I'm not special. I don't have this Einstein mind or anything.
Pretty smart.
He's given me these talents to do a lot of things. And I just, like I say, I want to make the world a better place. I want to use it for his glory and do what I can to help those around me use the talents as he gave me.
Yeah.
As long as he'll let me do it.
Yeah. And you're doing that, and we appreciate it. Yeah. So we want to thank you for joining us on episode 20. And we would encourage you to share this episode with a friend, send it to somebody who might benefit from it. Again, we don't do this for ourselves, but we do it that you would be able to grow and to become all that God has created you to be. And so we hope that you'd share it with someone, like it, rate it, review it, and help us spread the word. But Justin, again, thanks for
Justin,
being on the episode, and we look forward to seeing you all on the next one.